Hello, Packmates. This is Erin Kelly, author of the Tainted Moonlight series, and today I'm going to be reading to you the first chapter of Tainted Moonlight, which is the first book in my series. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1, Job Interview with a Werewolf. Mr. Diego, can you tell me what it's like being a lycanthrope? Corbin blinked, staring at the thin hiring manager who was eagerly returning his gaze from behind a large pair of glasses. He couldn't have heard him right. "I'm sorry," he said, and managed an amicable smile to the nice man who was sat across the desk. "Tell me what it's like to be a werewolf," he repeated, eyes bright and eager. The internet hadn't exactly covered this kind of question for a job interview. Then again, up until 5 years ago, even the internet believed werewolves to be only something in myths and bad horror flicks. Corbin averted his gaze to the polished desk, the shiny nameplate greeting him with the name Brett Kensington. Of course, the topic would come up about his condition. His eyes were a dead giveaway, no longer the chocolate brown of his mother's, but now a constantly wolf-like amber that nearly glowed with the pull of the full moon, which also happened to be later that night. He looked up again and decided to answer this offbeat question. He really needed this job. "As a werewolf, I am physically stronger and faster than I was before I was bitten. I can easily lift about 3 to 4 times my weight, maybe more with practice. I'm not able to work the night of the full moon, for obvious reasons, and the morning after I need time to recover. Otherwise, I am just as capable as any other candidate, maybe even more so because of my strength." That was a pretty reasonable response that put a positive spin on what could have taken a negative turn. "What about your eyesight, your hearing, all the senses?" Brett was taking notes, scribbling on a yellow legal pad. He wasn't sure how it mattered working in a steel foundry, but offered another smile. "My eyes and my ears are more sensitive, but it won't affect my work. My sense of smell is incredible, but I've grown used to it as well." He wondered why he'd bothered listing his credentials and skills on his resume. "Interesting," he said, then paused for a moment before he asked, "How long ago were you bitten?" 5 years ago this fall," he said, but felt very uncomfortable answering these sort of personal and invasive questions. He had survived a werewolf attack, and he remembered it as clearly as it had happened yesterday. The nightmares of a giant black wolf ripping into his throat in a dark alley still haunted him. He shifted in his chair. "Do you feel that you have good control over your wolf side?" Brett peered at him curiously. Perhaps this had something to do with the job. Maybe he was legitimately curious to make sure that this wouldn't affect his relation with other employees. "I have 2 roommates that help me stay locked down during the full moon. One of them is my sponsor and the reason I am free to be here today and not stuck in quarantine. Many of the others who weren't as lucky as him were in isolation," he thought, but did not add. He really needed this job. "I honestly don't remember what happens once I black out during the shift, but I've never harmed anyone, thankfully." I see. Brett tapped his pen thoughtfully on the paper, the sound welcome to cover up the wet thumping sound of his heart. "What's the transformation like? Is it painful?" "With all due respect, sir, what does that have to do with this job?" Corbin asked levelly, trying not to reveal his growing anxiety or anger in his tone. He was done with these prying questions. The manager folded his hands, then steepled his fingers together. For a moment, the hands ticked around on the Rolex on his small wrist. "Mr. Diego, I have a proposition for you." Finally down to business. "Okay," he said, and straightened up in his chair. "I want to become a lycanthrope." Corbin stiffened, surely not hearing him right. "Excuse me, what?" "I want you to bite me. I want to become like you." Brett spoke quickly, leaning across his desk. "Not for free, of course. I'll compensate you generously for your time and effort." Whoa, Corbin held up his hands in protest. "You want me to infect you? I'm sorry, I can't do that. That's an automatic death sentence in New York, along with many other states, some of which had even stricter laws. The shoot first and ask questions later sort of rules. You'll be generously compensated, and the transaction will be completely confidential. Name your price and I'll put it through. A discreet transaction in a numbered account somewhere that doesn't tax. I want this, Mr. Diego. I'm not going to call the police." This had to be some sort of joke, and he wondered if there was a camera crew waiting beyond the door, ready to pounce. He swallowed thickly, loosening his tie to get more air. It felt more like a choke chain than professional attire to the wolf. Inside he was already reeling, the wolf in him wanting to flee this danger, or turn and fight, and he couldn't have that. You have to understand, Mr. Kensington. I didn't choose this. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Believe me. It's not just super strength and speed. It's teeth, claws, and unimaginable pain every month. Worse, it's losing an entire night to something you can't control, something that isn't you lurking inside, something dark always under the surface. A beast that's caged within you and lashes out whenever you're at your weakest. Brett gave a flippant wave of his hand. I've done my research. This is what I want, and you can provide it to me. This is just the beginning, or a sign-on bonus, if you will. Now, do we have a deal, Mr. Diego? He slid a check with a lot of zeros trailing a 1 across the desk. Or not? Corbin met Brett's anxious gaze. It finally sunk in. You didn't call me in for a job here, did you? I'm afraid this company isn't hiring, but you won't need a job at all if you accept my offer. Retire young, maybe move someplace where the weather isn't bipolar year-round. You must admit, it's an enticing offer. He snorted. Yeah, try traveling when everyone you pass on the street considers you a monster. Don't you watch the news? Being a werewolf isn't what it's cracked up to be. What you see in books and movies, it's nothing like that. This is real. You get shot if you're outside past curfew. If they catch you, Brett emphasized. I'm fast, but there's no way I'm faster than a speeding bullet. I'm no superhero. Corbin paused, then attempted to make his own point very clear. They treat me like I'm the villain. Curfews, quarantine, restrictions. Do you have kids, Mr. Kensington? I can't even go 50 yards near a school. They treat us worse than pedophiles. So you won't do it then? No, and I've wasted enough time here. Corbin stood quickly, not even bothering to shake the man's hand. He pulled his sunglasses from his pocket and slid them on as he headed for the door, while the man made his final attempts to persuade him. Mr. Diego, if you don't do this, I'll find someone who will. Someone who'll take me up on this once-in-a-lifetime offer. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. He didn't bother to turn around. He could smell the last thread of hope grow in the man behind him. I hope you realize what you're getting into before you make that mistake. He quickly fled the room, careful not to slam the door too hard behind him. Corbin was all too grateful to make it outside the stuffy office building. He loosened his tie, glancing up at the darkening sky, suddenly aware of the time. 20 minutes until curfew, about 30 or so till the transformation. He'd wasted far too much time arguing with that lunatic. The thought that someone would want this life made his stomach churn. He made his way quickly to the bus stop, only to catch the familiar stench of oil and exhaust fading away. Corbin swore and began to jog up the street. There was enough time to get back home if he hurried on foot. Luckily, his speed was no exaggeration, but unfortunately even he could not outrace the clock. He was still a few blocks away when curfew hit. The wail of the sirens in the distance made him pick up the pace even more, his muscles on fire from the moon rising in the sky and the rush of adrenaline coursing in his veins. He caught a glimpse of red and blue lights flickering up ahead, and he darted into an alley, flattening himself against the wall. He closed his eyes, listened to the grind of gears in the engine, the rubber tires rolling against a pothole in the road, and then the sound fading away as the police car continued its patrol down the road. His heartbeat pounded and echoed in his head as he strained to hear if the coast was clear. There came a sharp pain deep in his stomach, causing him to hunch over and gasp. There wasn't much time left. Panting, he leaned against the cool brick wall and gazed up at the darkening sky. The moon was rising over the thick cover of clouds along the horizon, the pressure radiating through his bones. Jerking his head away, he took off running, full speed, towards the garage. Crossing a side street, a horn blared and tires squealed, and he leapt out of the way of the car and continued to move like a blur towards his destination, the familiar worn garage up ahead. The weather-beaten sign read Sears Autos. The solid garage doors were already closed for the evening. He burst through the side door and slammed it behind him, quickly latching the set of locks that sealed others out and, more importantly, kept him in. The force of the door slamming rattled the tools and assorted collection of items along the wall, including a small array of colorful plastic pinwheels, which slowly spun in the wake of him rushing in. A cramp shot through his stomach, and he nearly fell over, knocking down a few tires that were stacked near the entrance. He wrenched his tie away from his throat, trembling hands loosening his belt. He managed to step out of his pants and shoes as the pain escalated to something unbearable, and he collapsed to the ground, curling into himself. Pain stabbed through him, and he abandoned his struggle to unbutton his sweat-soaked shirt. He'd run out of time. He remained on the floor in agony as his bones and muscle twisted impossibly, yielding to the beast caged within him. His skin burned and itched as fur sprouted thick and damp with his sweat. His jaw and nose stretched, and his acute sense of smell stung with the familiar scent of oil and brick and metal. For a fleeting moment, he heard the wolf's thoughts. My territory. Home. Then he was lost to the beast, the wolf springing free as he finally lost consciousness. So that was the first scene of the first chapter of my first book, Tainted Moonlight. If you'd like to read a little bit more, there is more available on my website, taintedmoonlight.com, and you go to the sneak peek tab, and you can find the entire first chapter there. You can read the first chapter and possibly the second one on Amazon, last I checked. And so you can also look inside and check it out that way. So if you're interested, please, of course, you can read more there, or of course you can purchase it through Amazon. It's also available at Barnes & Noble or at most bookstores upon request. Of course, right now, please be safe. If you get my book digitally is probably the best way to do it right now. So until next time, Packmates, thank you so much. Thank you to Nicholas T. Davis for this challenge. And thank you to Taro, who decided to purr now. So if you hear any rumblings in addition, that's my Siamese adding his 5 cents to this recording at the very last minute. So thank you for that, Taro. Anyway, I wish you all the best. Please be safe. Please stay at home. Please enjoy your favorite books, enjoy your favorite media, play some video games, just do what you can to help flatten that curve. I have family who works as doctors and in the medical field, so hearing their daily struggles, anything we can do to help them by just keeping those numbers as low as possible is going to help. So please be safe out there, Packmates. I love you all. Thank you so much for your support. And I will see you next video. So thank you so much again, and see you soon. Bye.